Hi everyone, my name's Rebecca and welcome back to My Bookish Travels. Today I'm going to be doing short reviews of books 6 through 10 that I have read so far this year. The first book that I want to mention is Kiss of Fire by Deborah Cook. This was actually the first Dragon Shifter novel I ever picked up, and I really was intrigued by the synopsis on the back. I thought it was really intriguing. I definitely was excited to read this. Unfortunately, the execution just didn't meet my expectations. I felt like there were a lot of characters that were being introduced at a very fast pace, and a lot of the mysterious elements and questions that you would have with the amount of lore that she had created for the background for these dragons was just getting thrown into the mix so quickly, and answers were being given so quickly that for me, it didn't really leave a desire to continue reading. And for that reason, when I finished it, it just didn't leave me feeling the urge to continue reading the series and seeing where the story would develop from there. The second book that I ended up picking up was on Audible, and it was called The Learning Brain. This was one that I picked up a while ago and was very excited to read because I thought it would kind of give some things that would go into our learning style and things like that. Unfortunately, it went more on the medical and scientific side, I would say, with regards to our short-term working memory and our long-term memory and why we learn the way that we do. And it just ended up feeling too much like a college lecture for me in a field that I wasn't really wanting to delve further into. And for that reasoning, it didn't really connect with me, and it probably isn't one I'm going to listen to again. But if you're interested in more of the medical and scientific backing to why we think the way that we do and why we learn the way we do, you'll definitely want to check this book out. It just didn't work for me, not that it wasn't a really great book. I just had different expectations on what I was expecting out of it. The third book that I wanted to mention is Stormbreaker by Anthony Horowitz. This was actually a reread for me, and I am so glad that I had this as my next read. After the past two being a little bit more of a disappointing read for me, this was nice because number one, it's one that I've read before and I love, and number two, it's one that I really get pulled into and can read through so quickly. If you haven't read the Alex Rider series, think about James Bond in a 14-year-old boy's body. I liked the uniqueness to the gadgets that get created for him, and I really enjoyed just getting to come back to him in the initial start of his journey. The next one that I'll read in the series will be book 7, because that's actually where I'm at in the series, but I definitely felt that this was the right time to pick this up and read through it because it definitely helped to give me that drive to keep reading and not let a reading slump happen. So the fourth one I want to mention is the short story Christmas at Gunpoint. It was actually included in the anniversary edition of Stormbreaker that I read, so I got a chance to sit down and finally read this short story. And unfortunately, and I hate to say this because I love the Alex Rider series so much, it just didn't work for me. So it didn't work for two reasons. Number one is it's such a short length of time. There's only about 30 pages for the story to take place. It definitely felt too rushed to my liking. The other flip side is you really seem to cast some doubts on Alex as a character because of the fact that in Stormbreaker, he does say that although he did have some suspicions, there was nothing that ever led him to believe that his uncle was anything more than what he said he was. Whereas in this short story, you kind of would have to suspend your disbelief to believe that all he was a banker. So to my way of looking at it, it just didn't work for me. I didn't like that short story. So the fifth and final one I want to mention is Video Kill by Joanne Fluke. This one has been on my shelf similar to Kiss of Fire for at least 10 years, and I've been pushing off reading it, mainly because I don't do a lot of scary things. I do listen to true crime, and I understand that that can be scary at times, but slasher things, not so much my fave. Now, I was expecting this to be a bit more of a slasher novel, and it wasn't. It was more of a thriller, and that's fine, but it didn't necessarily work with what I was looking for. Number one, we have about 11 different points of view that are told in this story. And yes, it's over 300 pages long, but I feel like 11 points of view are somewhat too much for my liking in the story. I also feel like it didn't give as much as I was expecting based on what I read for the synopsis. For example, the story mainly revolves around a murderer retaking Alfred Hitchcock movies and filming them the way he felt they should have been, which is in all realism. which means he's going to kill the person while filming. So definitely a very creepy vibe and story taking place here. Unfortunately for me, if I get about halfway through a novel and I can make an assumption, now there's two different things that I had assumptions. I had an assumption on who the murderer might be. I also had an assumption of what kind of was working as a motivator for this killer. And I was right on both accounts. And when you're about halfway through a book and that is a suspicion you have, and it ends up being right, it just really takes away the joy of the story. With regards to this, though, when it comes to the ending, I feel like it ended really abruptly. And on top of it, I feel like there wasn't as much closure as I was expecting to see by the time I got to the end of it. Now, I understand completely that you're not always going to see things turn out right or well at the end of a really intense murder mystery, but I think I was looking for a little bit of closure when it came to finding out about the murderer. It just kind of, you find it out and then it's done. And I was looking for a little bit more of what was going on from there with it. But I do recommend, if you guys like Alfred Hitchcock, there are a number of things that were brought up in here that I actually was not aware of dealing with his films. So I enjoyed it. It just wasn't an absolute love for me. So there you have it. Those are my short thoughts on these 5 books. If you guys have read any of them and want to share your thoughts as well, please do so in the comment section down below. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you then. Bye!